Kia ora, good evening. I'm Hannah Wilkins. The Dunedin City Council chose to fight proposed cuts to the new hospital build this week with one voice. Councillors unanimously voted to support a fighting fund to defend the original hospital plans in the face of spiralling construction costs.
I'm getting ready to paint my placards, and I think I'll start with health cuts don't heal.
Dunedin's Deputy Mayor Sophie Barker promising the City Council she will take to the streets to protest any reduction in the new hospital build's plans. Councillor Benson Pope put forward the notice of motion to fund a public campaign to stop design cuts at today's council meeting. Mayor Raddick joined Benson Pope to second the motion, both reading from Te Whatu Ora's own risk analysis warning of the consequences of any last-minute changes to the build.
Attempting to save a little bit more in capital expenditure just right now will cause a lot more operational expense downstream.
While Raddick initially welcomed proposed scope changes, which came with extra government funding attached, the council's now unanimously against changes to the original plans.
We need to fight like hell for our community, for our people, for our city and for the wider region.
The campaign will see the council put forward $130,000 towards the project, as well as seeking money from additional sources. In Dunedin, the South Today.
National Party leader Christopher Luxon has been travelling around the Lower South Island on a quick speaking tour, with water being one of the leading topics of conversation. The opposition leader spoke to residents in Gore and Invercargill, joking about bringing the rain south, before fielding questions about local water reforms.
Southland supporters keen to catch the ear of National Party leader Christopher Luxon. Around 300 people turned out to a meeting at Invercargill's Transport World to hear his thoughts on climate resilience, agricultural emissions and local water reform. Luxon restated his party's opposition to the centralisation of local water assets under the controversial Three Waters reforms, outlining his preference for individual partnerships between local and central government. But speaking earlier in the day to a crowd of around 200 in Gore, he said cooperation between local bodies needs to improve before this can happen.
I really want to be able to come to Southland as a central government, make sure that Southland is joined up. I'm not interested in each district council having a slightly different view about things.
He says Australia offered a good example of local and national partnership on major infrastructure projects and believes a similar model could work here.
A good example would be the Hawke's Bay. 4 district councils, 1 regional council came together, said, look, we want to have a council-controlled organisation where the 3 water assets are actually owned locally.
Audiences made the most of the Q&A sessions to quiz the leader on a range of other issues, including pension levels, emission taxes and the Dunedin hospital build. And Luxon was keen to assure Southland audiences he's aware of the key issues facing rural communities ahead of this year's election. Across the South Today.
A nationwide lifeguard shortage is now making waves in Queenstown, forcing the District Council to close the town's public swimming pool at weekends. Alpine Aqualand is in desperate need of staff, with new pay increases and housing issues also playing a factor.
Swimmers doing a few laps and making the most of their local pool while it's open. Staff shortages have forced the Queenstown Lake District Council to close the public pool on the weekends. To open full-time, Alpine Aqualand needs lifeguards watching the water over almost 200 hours a week. Currently, it has less than 3/4 of that. Many current staff are also returning to university, meaning the large facility urgently needs at least 3 full-time lifeguards and a few part-timers for the vital job.
Look, this is critical. We have only closed once in the last 6 years for COVID, but this time, realistically, we have to close every weekend from February onwards until we find suitable lifeguards.
Queenstown's been struggling across the board to find workers, with hundreds of people struggling to find affordable housing in the popular resort town. Batrick says another factor in the staff shortage is a new mandatory pay increase for migrant workers, which facilities like theirs simply just can't afford.
High pay rate if we want to sponsor immigrants coming in. 1st of April, $29.66. So for an organisation like ours, that option's off the table. We just can't afford that.
The weekend closures will come into effect on the 18th of February and will be reviewed on a weekly basis. In Queenstown, the South Today.
Christchurch's $683 million multi-use arena Te Kaha is now ready to take shape. A milestone due to be reached this weekend as 40 major concrete pours start to build up the stadium's foundations.
It's been a controversial project, but work is finally set to begin on Te Kaha multi-use arena, beginning with its substructure and foundations. 110 concrete trucks will lay concrete over the next week in the southwestern corner of the central city site. The work marks the start of the main construction phase and is a significant milestone for the $683 million project.
There's 40 of these rather large pours. There'll be a significant number of other pours of concrete, but these are substantial ones.
He says there's a number of reasons why the concrete pours will be starting at 2 a.m. each day.
One of them is not wanting to clog all of the surrounding street networks up with 100 trucks at commuter traffic time. The other is the consistent of the ambient weather.
And contractors are putting in a range of measures to try and minimise noise in the central city.
All of the activities in the centre of the site is as far from the boundaries as possible.
The series of 40 early morning concrete pours will continue until mid-August. It's hoped Te Kaha multi-use arena will be completed by April 2026. In Christchurch, the South today.
Dunedin City councillors are planning to discuss the future of Dunedin railways this month and decide whether keeping the Taieri Gorge line is worth the money. Dunedin Railways has had a troubled past, with councillors set to reassess its value to the city.
It's expected to be a fierce debate as Dunedin City councillors consider the long-term future of Dunedin Railways next week, with a focus on the Taieri Gorge tourist line. It's been a tough few years for Dunedin Railways, which was largely mothballed during COVID, with services reduced to special limited runs. But some rail advocates want the City Council to continue to foot the bill for the operation to ensure the tourism-focused Taieri Gorge line operates in the future. Chairman of the Otago Excursion Train Trust, Murray Schofield, hopes the council recognises how important the line is to the city, now that tourism's back in full swing in Dunedin. At last year's council annual plan meeting, Schofield said covering the cost of the line could amount to $10 million over the next 10 years. The council is due to discuss the rail operation's future behind closed doors at next week's meeting due to commercial sensitivity. In Dunedin, the South today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, Queenstown residents are wondering why it took the Queenstown Lakes District Council so long to fix a water leak. And a Dunedin primary school welcomes back its pupils after the school break with a newly built playground. Tēnā koe, welcome back. Some Queenstown residents have questioned why it took the Queenstown Lakes District Council more than a fortnight to fix a major water leak. The delayed repairs come at a time when the council has put in place strict water restrictions for the area.
Some Queenstown residents have welcomed the sight of council contractors finally fixing a Peninsula Road water leak along Calvin Heights. Locals say it took the council 2.5 weeks and 15 public notifications before they started work on sealing the cracked pipe, despite having imposed water restrictions across the region. Many residents were upset at the lengthy delays, while nearby Arrowtown was under level 2 restrictions, including no sprinklers and minimal hand hosing. The QLDC says they work with their contractors to prioritise work based off severity and staff levels, which has been affected by the ongoing labour shortage. In Queenstown, the South today.
Thousands of Dunedinites filled the city's Chinese garden on Saturday night to celebrate the Chinese New Year. Cultural performances were capped off with a spectacular fireworks display.
The night sky above Dunedin lit up with brilliant bursts of colour. This fireworks display outside the Lan Yuan Dunedin Chinese Garden, farewelling the Year of the Tiger and ushering in the Year of the Rabbit. It was the sparkling grand finale to a night of celebrations, with more than 5,000 people, young and old, enjoying the spectacle. The display almost didn't go ahead as strong winds threatened to blow out the fireworks plans. That could have forced the show to be cancelled for safety reasons, with wind gusts of up to 44 kilometres an hour reported on Saturday night. Earlier in the evening, there was an array of entertainment around the Chinese garden, including a traditional lion dance. The main stage hosted a parade of performers through the night, with local cultural groups, including members of Dunedin's Chinese community. Other cultural groups, including African and Japanese drummers, happy to join in the celebrations, returning after last year's events had to be canned due to COVID restrictions. In Dunedin, The South Today.
Pupils flocked back to a Dunedin school with excitement as the holidays came to an end, ready to test out their new facilities. Outram School opened its new playground this week after years of planning and fundraising came to fruition.
Children monkeying around, having a blast on their first day back at school. Outram School pupils were treated to a brand new $150,000 playground as they returned from their summer break yesterday. The new facility took more than 2 years of planning and fundraising, replacing a well-loved but old and tiring playground built by parents back in 2004.
Bring the vision to fruition, and it's great to see it open today and children actually playing on it and enjoying it. It's very exciting.
The pupils had their say on the new playground's design and were consulted on what they would like to see on the finished product. Alan says playtime is just as important as what goes on in the classroom and wanted a great playground which encourages pupils to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really integral part of the school day and what the children enjoy, and they don't realise they're learning while they're playing.
The money was raised by friends of Outram School through various community donations and fundraisers. The old playground was sold to Outram Hotel, which will soon install the playground for their guests to enjoy. In Dunedin, The South Today.
New Zealand's oldest mobile library service will keep on rolling following an environmentally friendly upgrade. The Dunedin Book Bus has ditched the diesel and gone electric, while adding new accessibility features to be more inclusive.
Dunedin Mayor Jules Raddick opening the doors to the city's new library on wheels. The Dunedin City Council unveiled their first electric book bus yesterday in an effort to reach their zero carbon emissions goal by 2030. Te Pahi Puka Puka will carry over 2,000 books to the city's avid readers, with Raddick describing the vehicle as a roomy space that feels like an actual library.
This looks very good. Beautiful, clean and tidy layout, lots of books. And do they stay on the shelves as we drive around? Great.
The mobile library took around 2 years to make, cost just under $700,000, and has been decorated with a design about Taniwha Matamata, a local Māori story. It's now also been equipped with a wheelchair accessible ramp, allowing access to people who were unable to board the bus before.
So we're really keen to see some new people, new customers, and get back to seeing our old customers.
A second electric bus is in the works to replace one of the remaining 2 diesel book buses later this year. In Dunedin, The South Today.
Canterbury Museum is being turned into an oasis of urban artworks. The museum's given free rein to 65 local and international street artists ahead of its ambitious 5-year redevelopment project, allowing them to create a final exhibition of epic proportions.
Spray cans galore as 65 street artists are let loose inside the Canterbury Museum. 35 spaces over 5 floors have been transformed into spectacular artworks as part of the museum's final blockbuster exhibition, Shift Urban Art Takeover.
They're artists from around the world. We've got international artists here, we've got artists from around Aotearoa, and of course we have some of the amazing talent from Otago taking part as well.
Canterbury Museum has already removed most of its 2.3 million items as it prepares to embark on an ambitious 5-year, $205 million redevelopment of its facility. Clearing out the museum has given the street artists, both local and international, the ability to use the walls, floors, ceilings and stairwells as their canvas.
It's a really amazing opportunity to do something unprecedented in a space like this.
Woods says Christchurch has gained an international reputation as a leading street art destination.
The talent here in Christchurch is world class, and the work that's gone into creating I think a city that embraces that talent is fantastic.
But in keeping with the nature of urban art, the temporary artworks will only last as long as the exhibition, with partial demolition of the museum building due to begin in April.
This is an entirely ephemeral show. It lasts for 73 days. At the end of that 73 days, essentially, this exhibition is going to come down as the museum is redeveloped. So it really is a sort of a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
The Shift Urban Art Takeover exhibition opens this weekend, with proceeds from ticket sales going towards the museum's redevelopment project. In Christchurch, the South today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a team of semi-retired Wanaka road cyclists are testing out a potentially revolutionary bike invention. And Christchurch's Littleton Port is getting ready to host a major yachting event next month. Tēnā koe, welcome back. A team of semi-retired road cyclists on a coffee run are a regular sight on the roads around Wanaka. Now they're out testing a world-first invention that could revolutionise competition racing.
How close is too close? For triathlon cyclists, riding right behind another competitor to reduce their wind resistance is considered cheating, a manoeuvre known as drafting. Now this Wanaka social riding group is taking to the streets to trial the Road Ranger device. It's a new Kiwi-designed creation that alerts riders and referees if someone is riding too close. These cyclists are first in line to be test pilots for the Road Ranger because the father of developer James Elvery is part of the team.
It's been very difficult to measure the distance between a bike and a following bike by eye for both the athletes and the referees, and now it's taken all the guesswork out of it.
The semi-retired racers are more than happy to test out the new technology, although these days they're in no rush to lead the pack.
We're all about just having fun, getting out riding. In years gone by, we've all maybe dabbled a bit, and some of us more so than others in triathlon, so we know exactly what he's trying to achieve. So to play a small part in that, it's pretty cool.
Being first is no longer their goal. The Wanaka racers are content just cruising on to their next cafe stop. But developers of the Road Ranger are hoping to deploy the innovative device at the Ironman New Zealand event in March. In Wanaka, the South today.
The skies around Dunedin rumbled this week as a pair of ageing Air Force planes performed their final flyover.
The Royal New Zealand Air Force's fleet of Orion aircraft are being retired after almost 60 years of service. To mark the occasion, a pair of the planes performed a formation flight yesterday covering the length of the South Island. Some Dunedin residents were disappointed they missed yesterday's flyover, which was running behind schedule. A former Orion pilot says the planes have played a key role in the Pacific region, conducting maritime surveillance and search and rescue missions. The Orions are being replaced with 4 new Poseidon aircraft from Boeing. In Dunedin, the South today.
The port town of Littleton is gearing up to host a major yachting event in March as live-action, high-tech sailing comes to Canterbury. Spectators will be able to watch huge hydrofoiling catamarans flying around Littleton Harbour at high speed. But disruption caused by the big event is already creating waves around some local residents.
Littleton Harbour is set to come alive in March as the New Zealand Sail Grand Prix comes to town. Billed as a 2-day spectacle of exhilarating races and entertainment, there's much discussion about the impact Sail GP will have on the small coastal village. Some benefits from the International Racing Regatta are already apparent. Naval Point, a previously run-down and underdeveloped part of Littleton's harbour basin, has been transformed by the Christchurch City Council. But some residents are concerned about plans to handle the increase in vehicle traffic from the expected large crowds.
I think that SailGP are making a real effort to minimise the impact on the locals, and the business about the traffic management plan is basically to stop mayhem happening on the 2 days of the racing.
The tight geography of the port village makes accommodating hundreds or even thousands of additional vehicles impossible. Vehicle entry during the regatta will only be permitted for Littleton residents using special vehicle passes.
Between 12 and 6 o'clock on the Saturday and Sunday, locals will be challenged to enter back into Littleton, so they're going to need to get a pass to actually be able to do that. That is all it is.
She believes some people are overreacting to the situation, despite the restrictions only in place for a single weekend.
For the inconvenience of those 2 days for some of those people, we now have the most amazing work going on around the tank farms. Down at Naval Point there's a whole lot of activity around the rec centre. Now we're going to get to enjoy that well after SailGP.
And for those able to enjoy the event, organisers are confident all efforts will be worth it. The SailGP regattas due to be held on the 18th and 19th of March. In Littleton, the South Today.
Edendale was alive with the sound of trucks and tractors recently for its yearly Crank Up Day. The annual event celebrates the farming machines that keep the rural economy ticking over, with a focus on vintage tractors and the people who lovingly maintain them.
A celebration of all engines, great and small. A chance to ride on a 4-inch scale Burrell traction engine was just one of the draw cards at the 35th annual Edendale Crank Up. It's a rolling museum of vintage tractors and heritage farm equipment that's a fixture on Southland's rural calendar, with activities for all ages.
Well, there's really something here for everybody. We've got all sorts of parades going on all the time with different machinery of the different brands. There's all sorts of craft displays, there's steam vehicles.
There were also some shiny new trucks on parade, organisers keen to celebrate different motoring milestones from across the years.
We're celebrating 50 years of Mack trucks being assembled in New Zealand and a centenary of Kenworths, and as well as 110 years of Chevrolet, so it's a big event with all those very popular brands.
When the diesel smoke cleared, organisers said they were stoked with the turnout this year. Some of the rarest vintage vehicles will go back into storage until the next meet-up of the local Vintage Machinery Club. In Edendale, the South Today.
Hundreds of swimmers hit the water in Wanaka last weekend to compete in the Ruby Island Swim Day. Swimmers ranged from primary school pupils through to serious athletes, with a few blowing course records out of the water.
Junior swimmers racing their way around the buoy as they headed for the finish line. The sun was shining over Lake Wanaka on Saturday, creating perfect conditions for those competing in the annual Ruby Island Swim. Competitors of all ages took to the water to take part in a series of races. 460 people joined in this year, the second highest number of swimmers the event's ever seen.
460 is a really good number. 500 is sort of too many, so 460. 400, above 400 is great, 460 is just in the right, beautiful sweet spot for the right number.
He describes it as an exceptionally good day, with 4 course records broken over the event. Wanaka swimmer Cameron Stanley was among the stars, smashing his own 10-kilometre course record set in 2020 by nearly 6 minutes.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. The last lap was pretty sore. I was struggling a little bit around the last lap, but yeah, got there in the end, so pretty happy.
The women's 10-kilometre race was won by Amelia Finer, who blasted the course record by more than half an hour. And there was success by Ian Dixon Anderson, who beat the men's 5k record, and Olivia Thornberry, who broke the women's Ruby Island 2.5k time to complete a day of records. In Wanaka, the South Today.
The Queenstown Bike Festival has wound up with a celebration of Kiwi mountain biking legend Kelly McGarry. McGazza features a collection of events as a tribute to the rider in some of his favourite riding spots.
Flying to the clouds, the McGazza Dream Jam getting airborne over the weekend in Queenstown, in memory of late Kiwi mountain biking legend Kelly McGarry. 5 different events are staged over the last 3 days of the Queenstown Bike Festival, each with a special nod to McGazza. The competition pushes riders to their absolute limits, attempting whatever tricks they can over 60 feet jumps. Hundreds of riders and spectators turned out for the adrenaline-filled event, cheering and chanting as riders sent themselves into the air. The Magaza Dream Jam was one of the final events of the 10-day bike festival. Event organiser Emerson Wilkin is stoked with how it's all gone and paying tribute to his team of volunteers and sponsors.
Massive thank you just to all the volunteers. I mean, without them it doesn't happen. Everyone that's sort of chipped in to make it happen. You know, we have sponsors, we have just people helping us move things and set things up, and then obviously the mountain bike club too.
He's grateful that riders of all ages and experiences have been able to take part in the big festival, which wraps up with a memorial ride from the top of Queenstown's skyline in remembrance of Kelly McGarry. In Queenstown, the South Today.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube and Facebook to catch our news bulletins on demand. We'll see you again next week. Mā te wā.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.